What's up, folks? Levin doing a live show. Vish will be joining me here in a second, but before we get into everything, of course, I got to do this thing since, Rob spent some money on getting it made. All righty. Like I said, Levin doing a live show here with Rob on vacation. I know he's watching because he's an addict and probably because he doesn't trust me, which probably, let's be honest, good reason for that. But Rob, close the computer, put down the phone. You're on vacation. Go spend it with your family. I know I'm not that good looking. Okay. Speaking of that, yes, I am very much in need of a haircut, but we'll get into more important things like Brandon Aiyuk. We're going to talk about him. I haven't been able to weigh in on the new Brandon Aiyuk video, as well as George Kittle. It came out today that he supposedly lost 30 pounds in a month after surgery. Well, who knows if that's actually true, but trying to buy some time until Vish gets here. But I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the Aiyuk video. If you haven't seen it, Aiyuk did a short little video with Jayden Daniels as if he was live streaming, and it was just kind of caught on tape where he said the 49ers don't want him back. Look, I put it out there on Twitter. I don't put a whole lot of weight in this. I think this is shenanigans. That's how I would label it. And the big reason for that is, one, I don't think the 49ers would flat out say that. And two, if you watch the video, somebody was conveniently filming just over his shoulder so that you can see he's talking to Jayden Daniels on some kind of live stream, whatever you want to call it. And they just happen to capture it perfectly. It seems staged to me. And we got Vish joining in now. What's up, Vish? I see you got like big hair like I got going on.
Oh yeah, I saw you had the hair a lot earlier when I first joined the Gold Standard Network, and I was like, shoot, I'm so jealous of this guy, not Steph, not Jason, jealous of Levin's hair. And I was like,
my black and white hair getting progressively more white.
Salt and pepper is the new black and white.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I'm going the way of my father. My father took probably 30 years to fully go gray. It was like a long progression. I started a little at a younger age than he did, but yeah, it took him from like age mid-30s to the time he was retired to go fully gray. So I'm getting
that's not bad at all. That's not bad at all.
I would take gray hair over no hair. Rob is going with the no hair look, so I will take my place.
Rob, first of all, Rob putting guaranteed Vishes late in the comments. One is true. It's just uncalled for. Like, come on, man. Like, I got it. But then second, I'm with you on the no hair versus gray hair. My dad, like you said, you're taking after your dad. I hope not to take after my dad. My dad's got nothing here, and he's got the little sides going on. And look, as long as I get married, I'm okay with hitting that point. But until then, like, I need this. I feel like otherwise, it's a little hopeless for me, Levin.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people do look good with like a shaved head. Nobody looks good with like, oh, I'm going to keep the sides. But like a shaved head, some people look good. I don't know if that would be you or not. I don't think I would. I've never quite gone that far. I've had buzz cuts, but not that far. I know this is super important 49ers related stuff here with hairdos. I mean, the 49ers are like a big hair kind of team. You got Kittle, you got Aiyuk, the two guys we're going to be talking about today.
What about Kyle himself? He definitely is going to the barber every 2 weeks.
And he's gone like me. He's gone very gray in his 7 years with the 49ers.
I know he has, but I see him gel it up from time to time. I see when he comes before the presser and he puts a ton of water in his hair and he combs it back and over. I see you, Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle is definitely somebody that likes to be kind of like very prim and proper cut. He likes his clean look.
Oh, 100%. He's proud of his look. Like, he's aware of he's one of those people that's aware of his look. And I don't say it as someone as this is a negative, because I'm very aware of my look too. And when I'm staring at myself on camera, it's unfortunate because it's like, damn, like, hey, I'm not the best looking pipe in the yard. It's okay. But yeah, he's definitely someone that's aware of his look, and his game day outfits he brings it. He brings it.
I am very aware of my look. I just don't give a crap. I'm the person that like, I'll wear anything if I want to wear it. I don't care what it looks like. Full disclosure, I have a mowing shirt. My wife actually bought it for me. It
Okay.
is Chewbacca with wavy hair, like he's on the beach, and it's beach colored, and it's a tank top. And I'm
Sun's out,
mowing
guns
that
out,
every
Levin.
time.
Sun's out, guns out.
Yeah, that's how I am. But like we mentioned, Aiyuk has some hair, and he's very much the talk of the team. He's going to be the talk of the team until either he signs or he gets traded. One of those two. Like, even if he holds out, he's still going to be the talk of the team. Like, he will dominate training camp if he's holding out. So with that, like the video this week, I'm assuming you've seen it. It's been everywhere. What was your like first reaction to it?
Okay, well, one on a more like joking level, because to me it was very like a media move. Like it was like a little bit like they set this up and tried to make it happen where Brandon Aiyuk says it a certain way for the fans. The acting is horrible, man. Like
Yeah.
Brandon Aiyuk is like shy in front of the camera. It's almost like they did 3 takes and his girlfriend was like, "Hey, Brandon, press and record." And
Mm-hmm.
then, hey, Jayden, how's it going? And then they did that entire thing. Like, I'm joking when I say that, but to me, the point in all of it was that it was somewhat of a curated media event. I think Brandon Aiyuk is just stuck with where he is at his contract because, and I said this last week, I don't know if you heard, but when I was on with Rob and the Justin Jefferson conversation came up, to me, the Justin Jefferson trade was a statement to Brandon Aiyuk from the 49ers. I don't think they realistically thought they were going to get Justin Jefferson. But they told Brandon Aiyuk by putting that out publicly, like, hey, that's the receiver we would pay $35 million. We're willing to give up picks and give that guy $35 million. You're not him. You get
Yeah.
$26 million, and that's it. We're not negotiating. We're not pushing. $26 million is where we're at. Go find something else. And Brandon Aiyuk is stuck right now because he has nowhere else to go. He doesn't love the offer on the table, and he's stuck under contract for the 49ers. He has to create movement in this negotiation. Think that was a very weak attempt to try and create movement in this negotiation. And I think, unfortunately for Brandon Aiyuk, if he wants to create movement in negotiation, he has to do something that he's being very unwilling to do, which is be the bad guy to the fans. And I think Brandon Aiyuk is a guy that's very cognizant about knowing that his fan reputation is strong. I think his reputation with the fans is stronger than his reputation with the 49ers. And I think that he's very proud of that. He knows what that means. He knows what that meant when him and Kyle Shanahan were going through their little powwow in year number 2. And so therefore, I think Brandon Aiyuk, if he wants to win this negotiation, if he wants to push for anything other than signing for $26 or $27 million in July because he's desperate and he has nothing else there, he's got to be a little bit of a Deebo Samuel, which means he's got to do some stuff that goes a little bit above and beyond and will make the fans upset with him.
Now, I have sensed like there's been a narrative shift here because when we entered the offseason, a lot of people were saying, well, Aiyuk has all the power because all these wide receivers have been paid this, the salary cap. Since Deebo signed his contract 2 years ago, the salary cap's gone up over 30%.
Right.
And Deebo got 23.5 million. So 30% more than that, you're pushing 27, 28 million. So it was like everybody was talking about it as if Aiyuk had the leverage. Now, all of a sudden, I've heard like the last couple of weeks, people are starting to say, oh, the 49ers have the leverage. As you said, Aiyuk is stuck. He's got to take the 49ers offer. I'm still in the boat that Aiyuk has the leverage here because he can play out his 5th-year contract and go to another team. There are other teams that are willing to pay for him, get a trade now and pay him. Like he knows he can get his money in the future as long as he doesn't have an injury. And the 4th-year or the 5th-year option isn't that cheap of a deal. It's still $14.1 million in his pocket this year. So I feel like he still has a lot of leverage because the market has bumped up this offseason. And that's just the reality. Like if he's signed for like 27 million right now, the narrative 100% of that signing is, wow, that is a really team friendly deal because everybody else has gotten more.
Well, to be fair, I think regardless, even if he signed for $40 million, the 49ers reporters will sell it to us as this is the most team-friendly, brilliantly done contract we have ever seen in our lives. So I think that's going to be the narrative regardless of what Brandon Aiyuk signs for. Specific to your point, I would agree with you if I didn't get the impression that the 49ers are more willing for Brandon Aiyuk to play on the 5th-year option than Brandon Aiyuk is himself. And the reason I say that is the most important thing to the last 2 Brandon Aiyuk seasons is his availability in the offseason. He has been the star of this time. This is when Deebo Samuel usually doesn't show up. This is when George Kittle is rehabbing an injury. This is when Nick Bosa had a contract negotiation and is in Florida training with his brother. This is where the last 2 years Brandon Aiyuk has dominated the conversation, and he's gotten ahead by being there day one, time one. I've underrated this with the 49ers from day one, Levin. I'm not going to do it this year. Whatever they do at practice, they practice in a way that regardless of who you are, if you miss something in practice or a portion of the offseason, you fall behind. And they say you fall behind. And regardless of who you are, you just can't catch up to it. Nick Bosa could never catch up. Fred Warner could never catch up. Deebo could never catch up. And that's why I look at Deebo. 2 times Deebo has been in his contract in flux, and 2 times Deebo has showed up from day one of the offseason when his contract is flux in his practice. And so when I say that, to me, when I look at the situation, I would agree with you that the cards all lie with Brandon Aiyuk if I felt like this is a guy willing to play on his 5th-year option. Instead, I feel like this is a guy desperate for an extension, and I think that's where the 49ers have him because I don't think they're desperate to extend him. And I don't think, as good as I think they think Brandon Aiyuk is an excellent player, I don't think they look at Brandon Aiyuk as an invaluable player. And I think that's where they separate themselves from the fans. And this is the other point. I brought it up with Rob as well. Look at the guy they viewed as invaluable. His contract got done immediately. I know he's getting married. I know there was never a negative perception of why he wasn't showing up to camp, but they got his contract done immediately because they knew that that was the most important thing for them. They're willing to wait and play this game with Brandon Aiyuk because they're capable of playing this game with Brandon Aiyuk. Do I agree with your point on paper? 100%. I can't argue with the logic behind it. But to me, the way it's come across from just the perspective of the media is that Brandon Aiyuk is less willing to play on his 5th-year option than the 49ers are willing to let Brandon Aiyuk play on his 5th-year option.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that is a good point. I think the 49ers actually stand to be in a very good spot if he plays out his 5th-year option because, let's say he plays out his 5th-year option and he has a really good season. But Ricky Pearsall shows, hey, I'm the real deal. All these positive things are true. I'm going to be a number 1 level of guy. Well, they can say, all right, we're going to franchise Brandon and trade him and keep the cheap rookie contract guy and we'll just replace him in-house. Like that's where the 49ers, like that's a very logical place that they could be in the offseason if Brandon plays out his 5th-year option.
It's a better place, isn't it, in fact, because we have this impending Deebo thing, right? And Deebo to all of us is off the team in 2026, but that's also, or 2025, 2026, that football season. But that's also given that we all expect Aiyuk to be extended, right? But if you let Aiyuk play out his 5th-year option and you trade Aiyuk after franchise tagging him and Pearsall develops and you're in the situation you described, and we're talking about Deebo in a contract year, he showed up the entire offseason. I think there's a lot of us in our heads that are like, oh, I think Deebo's going to have a really big year this year as well, just based on how the start of this offseason has gone for him. Well, now you have one more year where you can just play it out with Deebo. Trade Aiyuk, get a pick for him. He gets a contract somewhere else. You still have Pearsall. You don't have to do anything with Deebo, and you just say, okay, Deebo, you had a great year. One more time. Last ride with you, buddy. And so, like, you're in a high leverage situation with all 3 receivers if you don't pay Aiyuk. And that's why I think Matt Mayoko and Matt Barrows, Levin, you and I both know they're not suggesting that Brandon Aiyuk is fully capable of playing out this season in his 5th-year option if that wasn't a comfortable, viable option for the 49ers.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I mean, those guys definitely, especially the Mayoko gets told certain things to push out there this time of year for sure. Yeah. So what Mayoko is saying this time of year, you can take, okay, that's what the team is wanting out there right now. Barrow's a little bit less of that. I feel like, especially in recent years, like Mayoko and the NBC Bay Area especially has kind of become okay, we're going to push this out. This is the narrative we want out there. We're going to use them, which makes sense because they literally have a partnership now. They're on the 49ers website now.
I think they more or less operate, like the 49ers website, given how little the 49ers website actually does in terms of providing content and access versus other teams. And I don't say this honestly as a disrespect as much as I am just the biggest hater of 49ers media. I say this as someone who watches other teams' media, man. Yeah. The access is totally different. Look at the draft shows that are coming out with these other teams' media and all of that. It's a very different animal. 49ers media is old. It's antiquated. I still missed even the Toyota drive-bys because even that was more of a personal experience with the players than anything we get today. They do not sell their players as human beings at all, and it's disappointing.
We need Joe Fan back.
Tight end University. God damn, if I had to hear another thing about that.
Joe Fan left, and it's like they just said, all right, we don't need that anymore.
No,
As well
not
as
at
like
all.
Kiana Martin too. Like they somewhat replaced Fan a little bit less writing, more video with Kiana Martin, and then when she left, they're like, we don't need to do this at all anymore.
Look, the best way I describe it, Levin, is that I think you're right about Joe Fan, Kiana Martin, but even more than that, I feel like, damn, when you're talking about like fan of a team, 49ers fans know the personalities of their team as well as the national media does, because the only
Yeah.
personalities the 49ers sell is George Kittle, George Kittle, George Kittle in your face, Kyle Juszczyk, Kyle Juszczyk, Kyle Juszczyk in your face, Fred Warner, Fred Warner, Fred Warner in your face. And honestly, this was one of the first things that got me popularity. I asked the question, why did nobody sell Jimmy Ward for 7 years? He was one of the highest tenured players on this team. Eric Armstead had to go start one of the worst podcasts, no offense, that I have ever heard in my life to be able to show any sort of personality. And this was the team captain the last 5 years. This was one of the most respected members of the locker room the last 5 years. They don't sell the personalities of their players good enough. And I think that's
They don't
rather
want to.
disappointing as just a fan, honestly, because
Yeah.
we don't get to see enough of the non-Kittle Juszczyk players, honestly.
Let me throw something by you and see if you agree. I feel like this is the post-TO 49ers. Jed York was coming into his own. He was kind of assuming the role of owner at that time. T.O. dominated. He showed his personality all the time. I feel like York is kind of like scarred by that, to where he has a philosophy due to that of our outspoken players, the ones that aren't just going to say the most PC things all the time and have fun, the ones that are like more like, hey, this is me, I'm going to show you who I am. They don't want them in front of the camera. They want, like you said, Kittle jokes around, right? Like you can't
It's
necessarily
very, but
trust
it's very
exactly what he's going to
curated,
say,
right?
but you
It's
know
very
he's not going to
curated.
say anything that gets the team or himself in true trouble, right? He's just going to make jokes. You know what I mean? Like you said,
His,
McCaffrey,
in
Purdy,
fact,
those are the
I'll
guys they push.
his joking, in fact, Levin, I would take it a step further. It's just a cover up for him being like playing a personality while not
Yep.
answering the questions the way he
Yep.
wants to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, for example,
100%.
if someone asks him a question he doesn't want, and let's say it's Grant, for example, him going, "Oh, hey, Grant, how are you doing, man? Good to see you. Good to see you." All of a sudden, you're worried about his interaction with Grant, and you're worried about, hey, WWE personality, George Kittle. And what do you forget? What was the question he asked him? Why didn't he answer that question? So it's an entire caricature that he plays, and the media does a really good job selling it for him. And he's created a great business, tight end university out of it. And I'm happy for him. But it's unfortunate, like you said. Now, the post-TO thing is an interesting point to me. I would defer to you that that's a little young in my time. But my question to you about Jed
God,
York
that makes me sad.
specifically is
If you
he
said
does
Jerry
not.
Rice is a little before your time, okay, I get it. But like you saying, Tio's a
Dude,
little like,
to
wow.
me, Terrell Owens is a Philadelphia Eagle, followed by a Dallas Cowboy, followed by a Buffalo Bill with Lee Evans, followed by a Cincinnati Bengal. Like, I don't even know T.O. as a.
Show over. I'm not doing the. Oh, yeah, and you're throwing your mic. You're supposed to drop the mic, Vish, not throw it upwards, just so you know. But yeah, that hurts a little bit. That makes me like miss Rob just a little bit, because him and I are the same age, so we have a lot of like the same experiences as a fan, like coming of age, like being young, seeing the championships, but then coming of age in a horrendous time period, and then being like
Rob's
adult
an
in
old
this
guy,
country.
You
Yeah, he's
guys
like
are
6 months
you're
older than
young.
me.
You don't look like Rob's age. I'll tell you that, Levin. I don't see the same visual as I see with Rob. All jokes aside, but the thing about T.O. I want to ask you is your point. The one thing about it is Jed York himself doesn't talk like somebody that's scarred by media relationships. Now, I agree his actions are somebody who's been scarred by media relationships, but Jed York sells anytime he talks to the media in whatever capacity he does, he talks like someone trying to create stories for the media. Oh, man, you should have seen what Kyle said when we drafted Brock Purdy. Like, I know that at that point we had just given up 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance, but he walked up to me and looked me straight in the eye and said, I think Brock's the best quarterback on the team. Now, think about the story from this perspective. That's a guy who just asked his boss to spend the equivalent of whatever the largest sum of resources they could spend on something. He went and requested his boss to do that. And then he's coming up to his boss and saying, looking him dead in the eye and saying, hey, you know that sum of resources we spent? This little sum of resources better than that. Is that a realistic story? Can anybody put that in perspective into real life? Probably not. Probably not if you look at it from a practical standpoint, but it's to sell an extra story. I'm sure Kyle thought highly of Brock early, but do you think he was walking up to his boss and saying exactly that? Because those are words that say, fire me in any capacity, even if he turns out to be right, just because of the amount of resources spent. So I doubt he said those exact words. It's something exaggerated for his story, but we don't got to look at it practically. Point is, to me, Jed York has always spoken to the media from the perspective of, I'm trying to create stories, I'm trying to sell stories. Look at me. Oh my God, look at what we did. He did it even before the Super Bowl this time. So while I think that your perspective on the TO thing is interesting, Jed York himself doesn't seem to abide to that.
Speaking of bosses that say, look at me, look how awesome I am. Rob chiming in there on Twitter saying we're doing a great job. Just had to take that opportunity.
Wow, this guy.
Twitch, Brisbee Life, of course, weighing in saying that you make us feel ancient. I 100% agree with that. Like I said, like I can get like the Steve Young stuff is a little like I was 14, 15 years old when Steve Young went away. So like he was like, childhood hero 49ers for me. T.O. was like, all right, he left when I was 18, but like that was like all right, I think I know what I'm talking about. I'm older now, I'm coming as an adult type. Like for somebody to not really truly remember that part, that's a little.
Let me maybe put that in perspective to you from my life. To me, my coming of age was Jim Harbaugh and those 49ers teams. That was like my age group. And in the beginning of Kyle Shanahan was like, I'm a little older. I think I understand what's going on now. So that's my perspective on this. T.O. is like, I know the story. I've went back and read articles that probably people my age shouldn't have been going back and reading and searching for. And I've studied the history of it, but I can't identify with what that feeling would have been for a certain Jed York in the moment. But certainly, I think he's been reacting to how the media criticized him early in his career from day one. I think he was scarred at such a young age by, the early media, and people forget this, was not Matt Mayoko when Jed York took over, right? It was Lowell Cohn. It was all these older people. And these older people ripped the guy who was getting an opportunity simply because he was born into that opportunity, correct? And I think he's still scarred by that in terms of how he interacts with the media, the fact that the 49ers media has never broken a relevant story to the 49ers besides what undrafted free agents they're signing, all of those things. I think that's all a perspective from that. And to be fair, I don't know that he's changed that much from that guy. I think the guy that hired Singletary in the locker room week 15 because he thought he was doing something is still there. I think he's very protected by the fact that he lucked into hiring Kyle Shanahan. I think protected by that fact.
I think other teams have tried to copy what the 49ers did. Get a coach and a GM hired at the same time so that they don't fight, and it hasn't worked out. Like he hit the lottery with who he picked. Now, I will give him credit because I think a lot of owners in the league would have said, I'm not hiring somebody that's never been in a front office. John Lynch is not an option. Pick somebody else. So I'll give him credit for being willing to go with like
I don't even give him that credit. I'm sorry. So here's where
I'm not a big hater of Jed York, but I'm also like I don't think he's the best decision maker either. But I don't think he's terrible. I think he's a decent owner because there's so many other owners that get their ego involved in so many.
Agreed. And I think he's a good owner from the standpoint that he cares about the 49ers. Not every owner cares about their football team. And I think he's a great owner from the standpoint that he's willing to spend. Beyond that, I don't know what he does that makes him quote unquote a great owner. And specific to the Shanahan situation, dude, this was a guy who had the 32nd ranked offense, 32nd ranked defense, put his faith in a GM who had no clue what the hell he was doing. He didn't have an opportunity to put faith in him. He put his faith in a coach who had no idea what he was doing, fired that coach, then put his faith in another coach and lost his quarterback who he was putting faith in that coach with. It was a circus situation. He basically walked up to Kyle Shanahan and said, do whatever you want. And Kyle Shanahan, all he was looking for when he was looking for a head coaching job was somebody that was going to be like, dude, I will let you do everything. I won't get in the way of you. And he got exactly that. And to me, I feel like the problem with the hierarchy and structure of the 49ers is to this day, Jed York knows he can't check Kyle Shanahan.
You're not wrong. There are times that I wish especially like say the third round where Kyle Shanahan gets checked. I don't think Kyle Shanahan should be treated like a scout when it comes to the draft. Give us your input and we'll take it under consideration. And that's as far as it goes. Because every time Kyle Shanahan handpicks somebody, it's been one of the worst picks.
To be fair though, I feel like there were some great handpicks from Kyle Shanahan, like Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel and these guys. And in fact, I would tend to, I don't know if you've ever heard this. I'm a complete Adam Peters hater. I think that Adam Peters did a good job talking to the 49ers media post-draft. So they're like, hey, good pick. Adam Peters must have made that pick. But guess what? John Lynch told us which pick Adam Peters made. Ambry Thomas. Ambry Thomas was picked by Adam Peters. But hey, we won't credit that to him. I think Shanahan gets a lot of credit for a lot of the good picks too. I think all the picks are more or less Shanahan decisions, the bad ones and the good ones, if that makes sense. I don't know how much you agree with that, but I would say that. But I think that hierarchically, I think that the 49ers are kind of in this stuck situation because obviously they're fully reliant on Shanahan and he's the mastermind behind everything they are and everything they've built the last 5, 6, 7 years. But as Rob always says, and I'm sure you share that opinion as well, there's some small tinkering you could do to Kyle Shanahan himself to make the 49ers a Super Bowl champion, probably 3 out of the last 5 years. And it's like, how are you going to be able to do that tinkering? Because it feels like Kyle Shanahan's in a setup where everything around him is desperate for him, and therefore nobody can actually ask him to do that small tinkering.
The small tinkering is solved when Deebo's not on the team.
I think that small tinkering will be solved if he goes to his next.
I think Deebo. I've made this argument with Rob before. I think Deebo became a crutch for Kyle Shanahan because under Jimmy Garoppolo he needed him. Now he doesn't need him, but he hasn't evolved past it. I think he still thinks if I just get the ball in his hands, great things will happen. So I'm just going to force feed him. Going to make sure he gets the ball, even when the wide receiver screens and the other teams are literally stacking his side so that he can't do anything. He doesn't get away from him. We saw that in the Super Bowl. That's my tinkering. If Deebo wasn't here, I feel like Kyle would evolve. He would get back a little bit more to what he was, where it's an offense that isn't going to try to force feed anybody. It's just going to call the right plays and trust the quarterback to get through the progressions, which I think then makes Purdy even better because that's what Purdy excels at. I think Kyle has kind of unknowingly shifted in how he calls things, and getting rid of that player would help him evolve back to what he was.
That's really interesting. I'm going to ask you this question. I don't know that I believe this, honestly. This is just for the sake of devil's advocate a little bit and mostly just conversation. Is it a case that Shanahan's unable to evolve because of Deebo? Or is it a case that Deebo's unable to evolve because the offense has asked him to do the same 7 things the last 5 years? And that's all he does. And because of that, he's never been asked to improve his game in any other capacity. If you look at a lot of the Niners' other stars, Brandon Aiyuk, as an X receiver, he does the same 7, 8 things. Deebo, his role is to do the same 7, 8 things. CMC, role to do the same 7, 8 things. Now, the creativity is that you ask them to do these same 7, 8 things from different spots. But the reason the offense is so complex and simple at the same time is because Deebo lines up in the same 7 spots, but runs the same 2 routes from those same 7 spots. And I'm really being reductionist in how I'm presenting this to you. But I asked that as a question. Is it a case that the system, well, Deebo, you do this, Aiyuk, you do this, CMC, you do this, and Kittle, you do this, and we're only going to have you do this the entire time?
That probably plays a little bit of a part, but I mean, Deebo is what everybody thought he was coming into the draft. I mean, he's better in terms of like, he's the best weapon in the entire league with the ball in his hands. I don't think anybody foresaw that in the draft. Otherwise, he would have been a first round pick. But they knew he was limited in the routes that he was going to be able to get open. And he has not progressed past that. Now, you can say that that's because he only gets to run certain routes, but a lot of route running development isn't just, oh, you get to run it in the games. A lot of it's on the player in the offseason, practicing and getting better, getting in and out of their cuts. And Deebo hasn't improved in that. So I would put more on him, but the scheme probably plays a smaller part in it, is the way I would put it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I probably more or less would probably put it more on the player too. But I do think it's fair to ask that question as well, because I don't know that I've seen a great evolution in Deebo Samuel's usage since 2019, if that makes sense. Sure, he lines up at running back now, but let's actually isolate what are the routes Deebo has run. since 2009. In fact, I would probably say he ran a greater variety of routes in 2019 than he does today. But I think I would agree that overall it is a situation that the player hasn't involved. And to me, it is just funny that the player has now showed up for every portion of OTAs and seems to be
I do wonder how friendly that relationship really is, because they portray it, at least on social media. Deebo and Aiyuk have each other's back, but I'm curious how much of that is real and how much of it is like me versus you. I want, because Deebo suddenly showing up when Aiyuk's trying to get his contract. Come on now.
They love each other just as much as you love the guy that you work with on your team, who you're closest with, but you're also both competitive for the same promotion.
Yeah.
Whatever that relationship is, everybody knows that relationship in work. That's Deebo and Brandon Aiyuk. To me, the more interesting thing is your point about Kyle letting go of Deebo, because like you bring up the Super Bowl, and that was a little bit of that. But then you bring up the NFC Championship game, and the NFC Championship game, the entire second half was players, not plays. And it was CMC, Deebo, CMC, Deebo, CMC, Deebo. And that's where, if we're comparing this to Brandon Aiyuk versus Deebo Samuel, obviously I think most of us would agree at this point, Brandon Aiyuk has proven that he's just a better player than Deebo Samuel. I think that's mostly a common opinion. Yeah. Yes, a common opinion. But I think if you ask Kyle Shanahan, and I don't know if that answer changes today, but you ask him 3rd and 5, you got to draw up a play for somebody. You're going to draw it up for Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel. I think prior to that Super Bowl, 10 times out of 10, that answer is Deebo Samuel. They trust Deebo Samuel to come through for them. They don't know about Brandon Aiyuk.
Right. That's where I see the problem. Kyle, yes, Deebo with the ball in his hands probably gets you 5 yards, but he's so limited. You can trust Aiyuk to get open regardless of what the coverage is. That's that to me. If I'm calling plays, I'm not saying, well, if I just get the ball into the hands of this guy who can't get open on his own, but if I scheme it right, he'll get open and then we'll get the first down. Versus, well, if I call the play, this guy is going to get open regardless of what the defense does. I'm calling it for the second one. And that's where I've had issues with Kyle and his play calling. He doesn't get away from what the game plan was. Like if he went into the game and he said, Deebo's our guy in this game, and the defense comes out and they're stacking 8 guys in the box because they say, we're not going to let you run with CMC. And by stacking 8 guys in the box, we're also going to be able to crash down on Deebo if it's a pass play so that he can't do his thing either. And we're going to give up behind us. He doesn't go to the behind us until he's desperate to win the game. Like he waits until the second half. Like, oh crap, I got to change now. No, change it in the first quarter when you see how the defense is playing.
I agree. And this happened in the Super Bowl, right? Deebo Samuel pulls his hamstring. He's writhing in pain on the ground. All of us think, oh, crap, Deebo Samuel is done for the game. This is Dre Greenlaw 2.0. The next drive, 3rd and 8, man coverage, inside leverage. Guess who they try throwing an in-breaking route versus inside leverage to versus Trent McDuffie? Deebo Samuel. Guess who got in no separation? It was impossible to throw him the ball.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel. So I 100% agree with that point. I think that's evidence. Do they view Brandon Aiyuk as that, though? Because I think fans view Brandon Aiyuk as exactly that guy. I keep questioning. The 49ers' actions have never said they view Brandon Aiyuk as that guy. They've never featured Brandon Aiyuk in a way that says they view Brandon Aiyuk as that guy. They haven't dealt with his contract in a way that they view Brandon Aiyuk as that guy. In fact, Brandon Aiyuk's receivers coach is coming out and asking for a team-friendly deal, saying if you match that, they're ready for that. Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown was the $30 million average annually, but very low guaranteed money.
Yeah.
Very low guaranteed money. That's an extremely team-friendly deal. That's what they're asking for. That's what TJ Houshmandzadeh is selling for. He didn't come to the media and say, pay Brandon Aiyuk like Justin Jefferson. And the 49ers are not even pushing on that. To me, I love Brandon Aiyuk. I think Brandon Aiyuk's a great player, but I always feel this discrepancy in how the 49ers view Brandon Aiyuk. And I don't think that they view him as bad, but I think the 49ers look at Brandon Aiyuk more as pretty good and amongst a tier of receivers. And they don't view him as the kind of guy the fans seem to view him as. And I contrast this to the Deebo contract situation, for example. And I know it was different. It got uglier and it went later. But the way they talked about Deebo throughout the process and all of that, they were never talking about trading Deebo. John Lynch was always like, no, we love Deebo. I'm not going to answer questions about Deebo asking for a trade. All of those kinds of things. they've been a little bit more open with Brandon Aiyuk discussing, like, we want to keep Aiyuk, but it's a business and all of those kinds of things. I don't know that they fully trust Brandon Aiyuk or view Brandon Aiyuk as the star that I guess maybe you or I probably view him as.
There's probably some truth to that. And that brings up one of the things I wanted to ask you about Brandon Aiyuk, because some people are still pushing. They're like, Brandon Aiyuk could still be traded before the trade deadline. Do you think there is any chance of that? Do you think the 49ers would actually trade Brandon Aiyuk either before the season or during the season if they know, hey, there's no way we're getting a long-term deal done here?
No, I think we're so far past the point that they're a better team without Brandon Aiyuk in 2024 at this point. Like, I think we're so far past that. And they're so desperate for how important 2024 is. It's their last hurrah, more or less. People don't want to say it, but this is their last dance. This is it with this core of players that has made four NFC championship games. This is it for them. And so when that's the case, they need Brandon Aiyuk in that capacity. I think the only thing that's getting affected by this Brandon Aiyuk situation, it's not moving Brandon Aiyuk. It's the fact that I brought up that point earlier about guys falling behind in this holdout situation and seemingly never being able to catch up this season. I think for Brandon Ayuk's case, if he doesn't get the contract or if he does get the contract, by extending this out and him not being there and being at practice, what they're missing is what made Brandon Aiyuk play so well the last 2 years. All the little intricate details, and all of that started from him being a participant and a competitor day one of every part of the offseason. He's missing out on that right now. And that's the only part of this situation that scares me. I don't expect them to trade him at any capacity at this point. I think we're way past that. What about you?
I completely agree. The only one that I saw that was thrown out there that I was like, well, that's somewhat interesting because they get a player back that I think isn't that huge of a downgrade to where, okay, maybe, because I completely agree. Like, they're all in. And when you're in an all-in season, you don't trade a person because, oh, well, we can get a first-round pick now and only a second-round pick in the offseason. No, like, when you're all in, losing out on 1 round worth of value of draft, even if it's first to second round, is 100% worth it if that player is a big-time player for your team. So that's how I view the 49ers. But somebody did throw out, which I don't think there's any real chance of it. Obviously, a Terry McLaurin and a second-round pick from Washington. It's like, that one kind of gets a little interesting. I wouldn't do it, but that one doesn't necessarily like say, well, what the hell are you doing? You got like, there is no trade compensation that I would be okay with. And I don't think the 49ers would accept any trade compensation that is just draft picks. Like if somebody called and said, hey, we'll give you a first next season and a second the year after that, I still think they say no. Cause at that point it's like, no, we're not punting on a Super Bowl. Like we have this window. We can't do that.
Right. And I 100% agree. And that's where only the Terry McLaurin one makes sense. But to me, the Terry McLaurin one doesn't make sense as a Terry McLaurin for Aiyuk with the pick deal. That doesn't make sense for either team. What people try to make sense of the Terry McLaurin one is Adam Peters is there and Martin Mayhew is there and Jayden Daniels is the quarterback and therefore. But if you look at practically and you remove these emotional factors, why would Washington, who's going into basically the last year of Terry McLaurin's contract, replace him and give another guy a brand new contract that's $5-6 million more expensive than what they have Terry McLaurin at? And look, if you think Brandon Aiyuk is the 7th best or 6th or 5th best receiver in football right now, Terry McLaurin is probably 13th or 14th or 15th. The point
and he has major injury concerns, which is the big part.
He has one major injury concerns, which I agree with. But I guess maybe the contradicting point that I was going to make with that is that outside of 1 through 4, if you look at receivers every year, okay, we think Jefferson, Chase, Hill, and Adams are probably the 4 best in football, right? Probably Jefferson, Chase, Hill, right? After that, 1 year we think CeeDee Lamb is 4th. 1 year we think it's Mike or Deebo Samuel. 1 year we think it's AJ Brown. 1 year we think it's DK Metcalf. 1 year we think it's maybe Terry McLaurin not there, but you know what I mean? There's a clump of receivers that we fit probably 5 to 20. That 1 year that guy is 5 based on how they play, and 1 year that guy is 16. And he's not that much worse when he's 5 or when he's 16. It just differentiates on how they play year to year. I think Aiyuk fits closer into that tier than he does in the separate tier of Jefferson, Chase, and those type of guys. And that's where when you look at the McLaurin deal on paper, it's like, why would Washington do that when they kind of do fit into the same tier of guy? And you're right about the injuries, but it's also $5 million less and a less long-term contract for that.
Yeah. I think there's a clear top 5. And then I agree, like the 5 to 20 is kind of a wash. I do think Aiyuk could potentially be, there's a chance that he is every bit as good as that top 5. We just have no way of knowing because the offense isn't going to feature him in that way. And the offense is a super run heavy offense on top of that. But I do think, it's obviously Jefferson, Hill, Chase, but I think the top 5 also is CD and AJ Brown, with CD taking the spot of Devonte Adams, as Devonte Adams starting his decline now. But after that, a lot of people would put Adams there, but I think he's declined. So I think if you get into the reality of what is he now, I could see him slipping to 8, 9, 10. He doesn't have to be the 6th. And Aiyuk's in that mess. And it just depends on
right there.
Who's healthy, who gets featured, who gets the lucky break or two, where a 20-yard catch guy misses the tackle and that's a 70-yard touchdown. So his end of season stats is a couple, 100 yards longer and a couple extra touchdowns. I see a lot of variance there. I completely agree that there is this big mass of wide receivers. That being said, I think it's really hard to get one of those wide receivers. That's one of the points that have annoyed me is people said, well, you can just replace Aiyuk. It's easy to replace a wide receiver. Don't mistake there being so many good wide receivers in the NFL now as easy to replace. The reason why there's so many good wide receivers in the league now is because so many are drafted in the league. There are a ton drafted. And I went out and, other than the 2 this year, because you can't count rookies, there have been 9 wide receivers drafted by this regime. Aiyuk and Deebo are the only ones that have developed into these are star level guys. And I would argue Aiyuk's the only guy that's developed into a true number 1.
Why wide receiver stats and wide receivers is shooting and scoring in the modern NBA with everybody being able to shoot the 3 and everybody be able to score. Everybody can do it in specific roles where they can be 38% 3-point shooters and all of that, but only Steph Curry can shoot 8 threes a game and still be a 42% 3-point shooter. And that's where I 100% agree with you. I think there is a clear distinction between Justin Jefferson and your average receiver that people call replaceable. I think there's a clear difference between Brandon Aiyuk and your average receiver that we call replaceable. Something like Juwan Jennings, that's a very good player. They can find another Juwan Jennings in the 5th round of every single draft. Now, emotionally, there's a tie to that player, and he's a great player, but there was emotional tie to Kendrick Bourne. Oh, how will they find another Kendrick Bourne? In fact, Juwan Jennings is better than Kendrick Bourne ever was. So that's also a fact in it. So I 100% agree with you. Let me throw this to you in terms of the Aiyuk conversation, because to me, the most important game from Brandon Aiyuk's season last year, and this is a very weird game because you can look at it in 2 different ways, is the Cleveland Browns game. Deebo Samuel got hurt in that game. Trent Williams got hurt in that game. They played against a very good corner trio in Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, and Denzel Ward. And Denzel Ward is one of the 5 best corners in the sport. They played heavy man coverage in that game, and he got into Brandon Aiyuk's face in that game. That was the game. They targeted Brandon Aiyuk, 11, 12 times in that game? Brandon Aiyuk, number 1 wide receiver, on the road, undefeated. Our Deebo Samuel just got hurt. That's the game for you to take over. He didn't take over that game. He struggled in that game. But here's the weird part. He was the number 1 catalyst on that final drive to get Moody into field goal range. That was because of 2 big plays from Brandon Aiyuk. So you can look at that game in 2 ways. You can look at it as that was his opportunity to be a number 1 receiver. They targeted him as a number 1 receiver. He was going against one of the best corners in football. Bad weather game. They expected Brandon Aiyuk to come through. He didn't come through for the majority of the game. But you can also look at it as in the biggest moment of that game, as the number 1 receiver, he was the catalyst that got them into field goal range. A lot of people say Brock Purdy, you got him into field goal range, and he did. But one of those throws was a 2-yard little slant, a little shallow slant to Brandon Aiyuk, and he took it, 15, 20 yards to get them into field goal range? That was all Brandon Aiyuk on that play. And so I kind of throw that game to you because I think that that's probably our best inflection point to try and decipher how the 49ers look at Brandon Aiyuk. Do you look at that game as a positive for Brandon Aiyuk to be looked at as a number 1 receiver based on what happened at the end of the game? Or do you look at it as a negative based on Denzel Ward, for the most part, giving him trouble early in that game?
I would say it slides more on the negative. If you got that 5 points of neutral, some would agree that it was a negative strongly agree. Some would disagree. I'd say I somewhat agree that it was a negative. I think it's more negative than positive. There were positives there, and there were a lot more negatives. The point I would make, I remember being frustrated after Deebo going down that they were having Aiyuk still try to do like the wide receiver screens that clearly were the Deebo thing. Like, Kyle, change your freaking game plan. You lost the player that's built for. And I do think that gets back to my point. I don't think Kyle is as flexible once the game starts. I think he's very flexible in the week of prep. That, all right, we're going to figure out what we think will work against this team, and we're going to change the offense to fit. But once the game starts, he goes, well, this is the game plan. I'm not going away from it. I'm just going to put a different player in that role if somebody gets hurt. Instead of going, all right, we lost that player. Let's go to what the next best player that we think for this game is and run things that they excel at. And that's my issue with Kyle. And he's talked about it. And I think he is all but confirmed that, yeah, and other players have talked about it. Like, yeah, when they start the game install, they like every day, that's what they spend their time on. They don't spend time doing other things. And that makes them inflexible when it comes to the game.
Yeah, I think that's totally a fair point. I agree with that. And I think, again, the Super Bowl is an inarguable example of that. Like, we saw the guy that they were trying to feature in that game outside of Christian McCaffrey writhe in pain. That's a variable in this Super Bowl that's not talked about. Deebo Samuel pulled his hamstring in that game and was on the ground looking like he wasn't going to play anymore. And the very next drive on the third down, they tried to throw the ball to him. That's a problem. We all saw him on the ground.
Yep. Yeah, and we got a comment here from Brisbee Life saying, like the wide receiver run to Jennings when Deebo got hurt. Exactly. Like, why are you doing a designed run to Jennings? Like, get that out of the playbook if Deebo's not in. That is a Deebo-only play.
To be fair, that was an admitted mistake. I think that's one that's easy to go back on, especially because they've also admitted, like, hey, like that was a mistake. We shouldn't have gotten into it. Specific to Aiyuk, I will say they targeted him he was targeted 10 times in that game. He had 4 catches for 76 yards, 4 third downs, 0 for 4. One of them an interception to Martin Emerson that they targeted him on after Deebo got hurt. And for me, it's not a situation of do I think less of Brandon Aiyuk because of that situation? No. I think Brandon Aiyuk is one of the 6 or 7 best receivers in the sport of football right now, especially based on how good he was last year. But I'm trying to wrap my mind into why the 49ers wouldn't want to give him Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's a contract that I give Brandon Aiyuk tomorrow. $30 million for that little guaranteed money, it makes sense, actually. And I don't think him and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I am not convinced that the 49ers are not wanting him to give it. I think this 49ers front office very much has the philosophy of, we might be willing to pay you what you want, but we're going to hold out until it's time not to hold out anymore. And that's why so many contracts get done at the end. Like, I feel like the Niners are probably sitting there saying, yeah, we know we have to pay him 30, but let's hold out at 26 and see if he settles for 28 or 29. I think they're that type of, sometimes you get like rich people who are still penny pinchers and they're still going to argue with you over $1, even though they have millions. They're that type of front office. They're going to try to get every last dime out of you when it comes to a contract.
So I think they're the opposite kind of front office. I think that they have a very clear analytical delineation of, if you do this, you're worth this. If you don't do this, you're not worth it. And unless Kyle Shanahan steps in and says, no, he's worth it, even though you didn't do this, it becomes impossible because they get stuck in these numbers at the negotiation. I think the Trent Williams one was this. I think the Nick Bosa one was this. I think this one's a little bit trickier because at the end of the day, when you look at the other 49ers stars, and I hate this because I come across as like a Brandon Aiyuk hater to ask these questions, because I feel like nobody in 49ers media ever asks why the 49ers don't treat Brandon Aiyuk as this player that we can all visually see that he is to be. Like, every fan probably thinks Brandon Aiyuk is one of the 5, 6, 7 best players at his position at the sport. 49ers fans specifically. 49ers have let Jalen Waddle get paid a lot of money. They've let, AJ Brown maybe is in that tier of top guys, but maybe not. He got his contract, right? They've let these receiver contracts go, and it hasn't seemed to affect their negotiation with Brandon Aiyuk. So I question it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with
We're going to
Brandon
find
Aiyuk
out.
and
If he ends up getting 30 million, we know, okay, the Niners were willing to pay him 30 million. They were just trying to get him for 28 and 29. If they
100%. We
don't,
will find out.
if he signs for 28, 29, okay, it could be either scenario. You know what I mean? If Aiyuk had held on longer, they might have given him 30. If because he signed, maybe that was the final number of the Niners and they said, take it, or we'll find you a new team after this year. You know what I mean? Like we don't know. We won't know if he settles for something less than 30 million, but we will know if it's 30 million. And I'll also
We
say
won't know if he's settling at all, to be fair.
Right. If it's 26 million, we know he settled.
Yeah.
We know the Niners had a hard line in the sand. To me, what that would mean is the Niners had a hard line in the sand. They made it. They said, this is it, or you're playing your fifth-year option and we're going to trade you in the offseason. And Aiyuk said, I would rather be a Niner, and signs.
Or
anything
you
in
would rather
between
just have the long-term commitment of the contract.
Well, that too.
One or the other. Yeah.
True. There's always an injury risk. But before we go, I do want to talk on the Kittle thing from today. I know we've been 50 minutes, and I purposely let the Aiyuk thing go long because I don't think this is much of a thing, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But I had two reactions to it. One was like immediate when I first saw the news. I think it was maybe either this morning or late last night that I first saw it posted. And then again, many hours later, I saw it again and rereading it, like a different thought popped in my head. My first one was, boy, that makes me a little concerned for this season because you can say, yeah, he got it back. You know, Lombardi's already out there saying, oh, no reason to be concerned. He's got all 30 pounds back. But there is something lost there. Like if you lose 30 pounds somehow of your core and your upper body because you can't work out, which is what he said he couldn't work out, even if you get it back by the time the season starts, there's got to be some kink in that armor because of that.
Yeah. So first of all, the Lombardi point in this is bullshit to me. Not because I'm saying Lombardi's point is bullshit. It's because it contradicts what George Kittle himself has told us. This was a guy who had a serious rib injury that required surgery after 2018. That's why he started wearing that gray sleeve that wraps around. It's a wrap that goes around his ribs. There's quotes, and I've constantly referred to this quote for the last 4 or 5 years that I've done YouTube, is that George Kittle doesn't get surgery in the offseason because he wants to train. He doesn't want to rehab. So he avoids getting surgery unless he thoroughly has to. Now, why would a guy say that he wants to train instead of rehabbing? Because he probably thinks it takes a lot for me to maintain my weight. And if I'm not training, I'm going to lose 30 pounds that I have to put back. So regardless of what Lombardi says, this is something that the guy himself has been concerned about regarding his off seasons in the past. That's why he's avoided other surgeries. Now, in terms of him getting it back, I think the 49ers are in a stuck situation with George Kittle. I think he's still really excellent, but I think he comes into every season banged up. He finds some level of ability to play banged up for a good portion in the middle of the year. He gets hurt again at the end of the year, and by the playoffs, he's reduced to just limping around and doing his best to compete because he's tough as nails. He wants to win, but he's banged up. They're in a stuck spot. I don't think that changes this year. That's been George Kittle's MO since 2019. Every year he comes in hurt. He walks out of the season hurt. In the middle of the season, he plays hurt, but he finds a way to play hurt really well. He's an excellent player, but I think they're in this stuck spot where this is just this trend of his career. And the 30 pounds specifically, Levin, I'm not seeing George Kittle. I'm not seeing his body to make those sorts of judgment, but I would just be hesitant on saying that this is totally unconcerning when the player himself has brought up the fact that he doesn't want to get surgery in the past because he wants to train. And when I see this particular point, I make the inference that training was about the fact that this was a guy who came into the NFL at 235 pounds. He changed his body to be 255 pounds, and there's a certain level of training, eating, and rigor that helps him maintain that weight, and that doesn't happen when he's rehabbing.
Well, that gets to the second point that I had. When I read his time, like when I first saw this, I assumed, oh, he must have had surgery in February, and it wasn't until like May that he could start training again. No, he said, when I saw the full quote, I had the surgery in February, and I couldn't do anything with my core or upper body until mid-March. I missed an entire month. My thought was, boy, you must have exaggerated that 30 pounds because you don't lose that much in a month because it takes 2 to 3 weeks for your body to start to lose muscle
Right.
mass and for the muscle to
Right.
break down. So if you only missed a month, even if you like stretch it to like, okay, it was 6 weeks and he still just said a month, like that's only 3 weeks of muscle mass. And I went and looked it up because I wanted to make sure that I'm not like, you know, I have a decent amount of knowledge on stuff like this because I do enjoy reading like medical journals and crap like that. And it says you will lose between 1 and 3% of your body mass per week if you're doing nothing. And that just varies person to person. So even if you lost 3% per week, you only got 3 weeks of losing if it was 6 weeks.
Maximum of like 10 to 12 pounds.
Yeah. Maximum you could put, if you're saying 250, you could say like, okay, maximum's 20 pounds. You're saying 30. I feel like this was like a George Kittle being George Kittle, where like he exaggerated it because he's always about the big show. And I don't think he constantly was like, oh, I'm going to lie and make it sound bigger so I can get attention. I think it's just that's his personality of like he's a big storyteller. He likes, it's the WWE in him. He likes to put on a big show. So I think, yeah, he probably lost like 10, 15 pounds during that period, and he said 30.
100% agree. And I love it too. This is our first time doing a show together, but I feel like you're one of the people that's read Kittle the same way I am. To me, Kittle is one of the smartest people on the 49ers. He's so smart that he's able to create this entire caricature that people believe.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's not who he is. Kittle is a serious guy. He's serious about football. He's serious about his business. And he's so serious about his business that he's able to walk around being, aw shucks, golly gee, George Kittle, funny WWE guy, and you guys all eat it up. It's a business move. It's a business reputation. It's a business brand. I 100% agree with your point on the 30 pounds.
I will say this, and I don't know if people view me as this, but when I first saw Kittle, I was like, he's got my personality, because I'm very serious in my like things of life, but I constantly crack jokes. Like one, jokes are, it's a defense mechanism to a certain degree. Like I'm the person that like, if somebody dies, I'm wanting to crack a joke and I have to stop myself because that's my way of like breaking the tension and not having to deal, defense mechanism. But it's also like, I put on a persona, like my jokes about Rob where I give him crap. I'm not like that off there. That's a persona because people reacted to it.
Right.
And I was like, hey, let's play this up a little bit. People like it. And we do kind of rib each other a little bit here and there. And I do text him sometimes jokes here and there, but like, I'm not that way in like my real life. And I feel like I see that with Kittle. Like I put on an act when I'm out in public, but when I'm home, I am probably the most boring person ever at home. Like I want to sit, I want to veg. I barely drink ever. Like I live a very boring life, but when I'm out, it's like I got to be like the life of the party. There's two different versions of me is how I've often put it. And I think Kittle's the same way. When he's out in front of the camera, he's on and he's got to be the life. He's got to be cracking the jokes. But I think behind the scenes, when he goes home, I think he probably has a somewhat boring home life. Like when he's at home, that's his time to like cool down from having to be on all the time.
And I think he's obsessed with football. Like he's obsessed with this shit. When you look at how he transformed his body, how he's transformed in the game. And that's where I feel like sometimes this entire caricature, the reason I kind of joke about it is I think it does a disservice to who he is. Like, I think this is a very serious guy. I think this is a very intelligent guy. I think this is a guy with great perspective on the game. I think he's the biggest locker room reason behind why the continuity, why the players are from 2017 to 2024, whatever. That starts with the fact that this was the first offensive player on this team to make first team All-Pro. He did it in 2018. He shut his mouth and let Deebo Samuel be the star of this team. He shut his mouth and let Christian McCaffrey be the star of this team. He shut his mouth and let Brandon Aiyuk get more targets than him. All of that stems from, to me, the respect everybody has for him. And the reason I also joke about it too is because I have the same read on his personality as well. And I think it does a disservice to him, and the 49ers media does a disservice to him because I think they only cover caricature George. But I think Serious George is one of the biggest reasons why the 49ers have been as excellent as they've been the last few years. I think he's all about winning. I think he's a guy that's 100% committed to football. I think he's 100% committed his body, everything that goes into preparing for it. That's why this is a guy that doesn't get surgery, psycho trains, all of those things. And I think only focusing on the caricature that he puts on in these short forms, because it's easy for you to cover that caricature, is being a lazy reporter on an excellent player And honestly, to me, probably the most interesting human being on the 49ers, because I think he's this psycho that puts on a WWE personality.
Yeah, I mean, people who are capable of truly playing a character all the time and not showing them their real selves are inherently very smart people because they have to be able to portray something that they're not. And they have to understand what that is and keep on the act all the time without slipping up. It's one of the things that I'll be looking for in the receivers show. Do we see a different side of George? Do we see behind the scenes where he's like this workout warrior, crazy obsessed, serious, like, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger in the weight room, and that's what he is when the camera's not on. I feel like we might see a narrative shift for him when the show comes out because we might see like the serious side behind the scenes and not so much the jokes. I'm sure he'll make his jokes because he knows the cameras are there, but we'll see like the work he puts in, that he's probably putting in like, 17, 18-hour days during the season because he's got practices and then he's always training or in the training room getting, rubbed
Rehabbing to get
down,
himself to
rehabbing
play.
so that he can
Yeah.
then train, later. You know what I mean? Like, I think we'll see that side of him in the show, and I hope we do, put it that way.
Me too, honestly. And all things aside about him coming into the season banged up and leaving the season banged up, he's a great player. Like, it would totally behoove the 49ers if he is fully healthy. I just think we're at a point in his career where this is just an excellent player, and you have to just, okay, he's going to be excellent, but he's also going to be excellent with dealing with this knee or dealing with this shoulder or dealing with this. And he's going to play through it. He's a hell of a competitor. He's going to do everything himself to get himself on the field, but you're never going to get 100% of this excellent football player. But I also think for them to survive this long, have him on the team this long, have him be such a key contributor for this long, have him to have every single human being that has come through the 49ers organization in the last 7 years respect, you can't be the guy that he is to the media. No way he's that guy to me and have all of those things. No way.
No, I agree. I think George is the kind of lifeblood of the 49ers currently.
I
And
agree.
it's one of the reasons why we might see him be the guy. You talked about how this is the final year. He might end up being the guy that the team holds on to too long. They were willing to cut the cord with Eric Armstead this year and take the huge dead cap and do the post June 1st and all that with him. We might see the Kittle's the guy that they're not going to do that with because they need him, because if they let him go, it changes the whole culture. And there's going to be a letdown because he's absent from the locker room all of a sudden. And they need to wait until there's another person, either he's retired or there's another person that has that kind of fiery rah because he is the rah guy of this team. We don't
I
see
agree.
Christian McCaffrey getting, rah. We don't see that from Purdy. Purdy's not that type of quarterback. He is the guy that's like going to try to light a fire under other people. And so until they have that in the locker room, I don't see them moving on. Whereas a couple of years ago, I was more under the case of, all right, Kittle's banged up a lot. When he hits his 30s, move on from him. I don't think they can.
So I've been a little bit more like, just from a practicality standpoint, like, hey, the money and all of this, like, move on from Kittle. But when you put it from just the pure intangible standpoint, I agree with you probably. And I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind on this the more I think about it. But just hearing your perspective on just like, can they move off of him from a locker room standpoint? I agree. To me, it's less about the rah rah. I'll be fully transparent with you, Levin. I think that the rah rah thing is total bullshit in sports and all of that. I think too many people conflate, Billy's dad, when we were 7 years old playing Park District soccer together, really motivated me to run for that ball so that I could get my orange slice after the game. And that's their sporting experience. So they think
Yeah.
that's the entire idea of grown men getting other grown men like, oh, let's run through a brick wall. That's not life. I mean, which grown man is telling Levin Black, Levin, let's get real hyped up. Levin, you got to go do this, man. Levin, you're the guy. Levin, like, is that what's waking up Levin Black every morning? Or is Levin Black motivated by, I got to do things for my family, I have this perspective on life? Or those the things getting up Levin Black in the morning? I would probably say it's the latter. I'm making a large assumption there. But where I think Kittle is invaluable in the same perspective, less about the rah-rah, is I think all the unselfishness stems from the fact that that's the first guy to make first team all pro. That was the first guy to be the man, and he shuts up and never complains. He never asks how many times he's getting the ball. He never asks for the ball. He never says anything wrong about who is getting the ball. He shuts up and does his job. And to me, it's like the Brady Belichick effect. It's on a much smaller scale. It's not the Patriots way with the 49ers. They clearly have a much more open environment and all of that.
Mhm.
But I think that the point with Kittle is more so like, hey, like they are able to all fall in and be unselfish because he never does it. And how can Deebo complain about not getting the ball if Kittle's not complaining? Kittle was the star before Deebo. How can Aiyuk complain about getting the ball if Kittle's not complaining? Kittle's bigger personality, bigger star, bigger leader, more respect than Deebo. And I think that's the culture that stems from him. I think it's his innate unselfishness. This was the first team All Pro. He was a first team All Pro in 2018, or
Mhm.
second team. Was he first team in
I
2018?
think he was first team because he set the record that year.
I think he might have been second in 18 and first in 19. Even
Mm.
with the record, I think he might have been second. We can look that up, but the point is this
Yeah.
is a guy that has all the accolades, right? He achieved the accolades when this team still sucked, and he allowed other people to become more featured in this offense. His ego never got in the way of that, and I think that's culturally been something that's been underrated and allow them to maintain that regardless of who's on this offense. The rah-rah stuff, Levin, I don't know. Maybe we should move that conversation for another show between you and I because I loved doing this one. But I think that too many people look at it like the entire idea of coaches motivating and all of that. Like, God, that's totally God. Like, I mean, we
No,
work on
see,
teams and
I
jobs
don't
and all
agree with
that.
you. I think it's certainly less than when, like your example, when you're a 7-year-old. Certainly less than that because you are dealing with professionals. But we have seen a lot of pro athletes who just don't give a crap, and
Mhm.
they flame out because they don't give a crap. And I do think, especially once you
But
reach a certain,
is somebody telling them? So, like for example, this is where I conflate that. Right, I agree. Nobody gives a crap. But tomorrow is the guy not giving a crap? Is Mike Tomlin getting and saying 8 different inspirational quotes to him the way he delivers at press conferences to make that guy give a crap? No, that guy still doesn't give a crap even when he's amongst Mike Tomlin. You know what I
well,
mean?
for some of those players, but I do think I think when you hit a certain level of greatness and sustained greatness, your words mean a lot more, even to the professionals. Like Ray Lewis is probably the most infamous raw guy out there, I would say. Do you think his words carried weight in that locker room? If he said, "Hey, pick your crap up, you're lollygagging out there," you don't think a guy listened when Ray Lewis said it? Now, obviously, Kittle's not on that tier as Ray Lewis, but I think in that locker room, he's that guy that if Kittle tells you you need to pick it up, you're going to listen to him a lot more than a rookie like Ricky Pearsall saying it.
Agreed. And I 100% agree with that. I guess where maybe we disagree is that I think Kittle's words only have meaning not because of what he's saying, because of who he is and what he does and who he represents. And all of those things aren't words, they're actions to me. And that's why his words have meaning in the first place. I think the words itself, this idea of Kittle himself being rah rah, I don't think it's the rah rah that's inspiring people when Kittle is telling them to pick it up. It's the fact that this is a guy that comes in every day. He does his job the right way. He always shows up to get treatment. He always shows up and plays. He always practices hard. I think when you encompass all of that and then that guy says, Levin, pick it up, it's a totally different conversation to me. But I think the idea of like, oh, we just need to be motivational people that exude professional excellence and all that. I don't know. I have a very jaded outlook on sports. I feel like too many people think sports of when me and Billy played together at 9 years old in Park District soccer, and that's how athletes should think too. I tend to look at sports and look at athletes more of, hey, how do we react in our jobs? How do we react with the people we work with? How do we react amongst the people we work with? I think that's more closer to how they are amongst teammates. I don't think they look at teammates as their best friends the way we looked at as our teammates when we were growing up and playing sports with them and going to school with them. I think they look at them closer to coworkers. And I don't know. I just have an outlook of the NFL that comes
It's
from I
probably
look at these
somewhere in
people.
the
Yeah,
middle. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but maybe we'll see in the future if I'm able to rah inspire you to show up on
perhaps.
time for the next time we
Oh
do the show.
gosh. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Okay, Levin.
Just had
Didn't
to
know
throw
Rob
that
was
in there.
coming out today, huh?
Full disclosure, 9:00 on the dot, my phone goes off. I'm assuming it's you saying, "Hey, I'm popping in," or
No, it's
whatever.
Rob probably
I
telling
look,
you that I'm
Rob
coming
goes, "Let me
late.
guess, he's late."
I texted you, to be fair, at 8 p.m. Central. I was walking home from
Yeah.
work and I was on the phone with my dad. We were having a good conversation. Sorry,
Your
Levin.
dad's more important than me, let's be honest. In your life, your
I
dad is
wouldn't I
more
wouldn't I
important.
wouldn't say, I wouldn't do that to yourself, Levin. You're an important guy.
In
Don't
your
let's not
life,
gas my
your
dad's
dad is
ego like
much more
this.
important. My dad is much more important to me than, if my dad called me at 9:00, this show wouldn't have started at 9:00. Well, let's be honest here.
Oh, okay. Sean Clapper says that's why you're a wannabe Vision, not a pro. Well, shoot, I didn't even know I was a wannabe. That's better than what I thought I was.
Look at that hair. Does that look like a wannabe? Come on now. Look at the curls, the shine.
It's all because of you, man. Like, are you kidding? Like Jason, Steph, they don't got good hair. Tuesdays, who cares
Yeah.
about that podcast?
Mm-mm.
Levin and you and Rob, that's the one people are like, holy crap, look at the hair on these two guys. I do,
Yeah,
but
my
honestly,
hair is
you
like
have good
very
hair.
much. I can't do anything with it. Like, okay, yeah, I got lots of volume to my hair. In high school, I had an afro, full disclosure. Yes, I did.
Okay.
I
Okay.
rocked the white man afro in high school because I didn't know better.
I'm rocking the brown man version.
But my hair naturally like poofs like this, naturally swirls like I can't control it. Like it's going to go to this. Even if I put gel in it, the gel will weigh it down, so the volume goes away to a degree. But it's still going to have like the same where the swirls are and everything. Same. I literally cannot stop my hair from going anywhere, which is why I get frustrated when it's growing out. Like I want a haircut right now. I just haven't found time to go get a haircut because it drives me nuts when it gets to this length because I can't do anything with it. It's going to be what it's going to be.
Oh
That's just a
man,
little
Levin.
behind the scenes of my
I'm
frustrations.
just I'm just so I'm just I'm just feeling so bad for you. Your hair
Yeah.
looks the
Yeah.
same every day. Like holy cow. Like your hair is consistent. Like oh my god. Like I feel so bad
It's
for you, Levin.
consistently not good though. Would you
Dude, I
rather
don't
have some good days of hair or, well, my hair's the same every day, but it's not really that good?
For people with curly hair, they know this. I feel like what happens is you have one good day of like hair. Maybe you slept kind of funny. You woke up kind of funny. Like, and your hair is just like poofed up, curled. It's all looking in the right place, whatever. You try to, okay, I slept in this position last night. My hair showed up real good. You try it again, and the next day, one side's up over here, one side's up over there. And it's like,
Do
God
you know
dang.
how you get the best hair? Like, do you have like a specific thing that happens? Something like for me, if I've like, I'm showered, my hair's dried, it's been there, and then I'm like out in the rain where it gets completely soaked. Then it stays down. I lose the volume. It curls it a little bit more. It goes into better spots. And that's when I have like nicer hair. Like last week, I had very curly hair because I just come from the pool. And so my hair had that situation. But that's when, like, I always tell my wife, like, I wish I could like take a shower and then like have time or 2 hours later I could re-wet it. And when it dries, then I have good hair. But 2 hours later, I'm at work
You
or I'm
already have a
out or,
wife, though,
yeah,
Levin. She's happy with your hair.
that's why I don't have a haircut. The last day off I had where I had a chance to get a haircut, she was like, "But I like your hair because
Oh, there
when it
you
gets
go.
long, it curls more." So she
For
likes
me,
when
I
it
still
gets
have to
curly.
rely on my mom. I have to be like, "Mom, do you like my hair?" And she's like, "Great." No, I'm
That's
kidding.
not what your dad
But
was calling about. Hey, I saw the live
exactly.
stream. Go get a haircut.
But your point about routine, honestly, man, no. Like I wish I could tell you. God, I've seen so many different social media videos of how to maintain your curly hair, and it's all just them selling a bunch of products to you and
Yeah.
all of that. Honestly, no. I used to be pretty conscious about my curly hair. In fact, I used to wear hats like all the time, like right before even I would get on shows, because what I would get was it would flatten my hair and I would
Yep.
have hat head. And so my hair would now stay in one place because everything is
Yep.
flattened and just stuck in that place. In fact, like if you go watch some of my early shows with Grant and all, I was pretty conscious about it. Now my hair was a lot shorter, but I would always come onto the show with very flat hair because I would stick a hat on there because I just wanted it to stay in one place. I was
Yep.
so used to my
I
dad
pull
taking
that
a
trick.
harsh comb and combing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If I get out of the shower, comb my hair into its spot, and then put a hat on and wait until it dries, then it will stay to where exactly it would be like I gelled my hair without gel.
Yep, it doesn't move. It flattens in your hair. Also, it doesn't dry out as much. It has like a
Yeah.
softer texture to it. It's weird. I don't even know how to describe
To
it.
all
But
our
yeah.
streamer people watching out there, expert hair advice from two guys that
Oh
can't
yeah.
control what their hair does.
Exactly. This is when they come to the Gold Standard podcast and they saw the pictures and the headshots of all of us. I'm sure they thought Levin and Vish, those are the two guys that I want to have 15 minutes
Yeah,
devoted to
yeah.
just hair
Yeah,
conversation.
my headshot on Gold Standard, literally, I texted Rob, never mind, I don't want to use that one. I don't really like that. Here's a new one. And he goes, too late.
Sounds like Rob.
I could go in there and change it myself. I have access. I don't. Like I said earlier, I will wear whatever I want because I don't care what anybody thinks of me. I will wear my Chewbacca on the beach with wavy hair when I'm
I
alone.
mean, Levin, given that you are controlling the Gold Standard network, you're the network this week, you're the man in charge. And given that, we've just spent the last 15 minutes doing hair talk, maybe you should get the two hair geniuses in Jason Aponte and Steph Sanchez to do a full video on hair advice for all of us.
Yeah, the Gold Standard do, we'll call it. We can do
Is
that
that
like a
Steph's
week.
do or is that Jason's?
It depends on the day, I guess. Like those two go back and forth. The fact those two are on a show together is like they got to be like, I'm doing the show with Steph today. I got to go do my hair. Or I'm doing the show with Jason today. I can't let this go. I got to go fix that one hair that's sticking up.
Their consistency is remarkable.
Their consistency with like lots of volume is remarkable. Like it's not like they have, a short buzz cut or something and simple and easy. No, they spend some time.
It's glorious.
Kudos to
it's
them.
glorious. Yeah.
I'm not hating
just
for the
discussed.
record.
Oh,
It's more
no. As we've
jealousy
just
more than
discussed the
anything
last
else.
15 minutes, it's impossible to do what they're doing. In fact, it might be more impressive than any achievement we talk about from the 49ers, because I'm sure there's a lot of 49ers players that are looking for that level of consistency with their hair days.
Now, let's see if you can get this reference, because it's a movie from my childhood, but not from yours if T.O. is too old for you. I have not met Jason and Steph yet. When I meet them, should I pull the Ace Ventura where I try to rip off the wig to make sure that it's real hair?
You might not reach the top of Jason's head.
That's true. I might have to jump, and boy, do I have white men can't jump jeans. Yeah. My vertical is probably like 8 inches.
Jason's a tall guy, and he looks like a tall guy in this like 4x4 that you get to see him in. And then you meet him, and then it's like you expect him to be tall, but it's like your entire like dimensions of how you were viewing this space that you were viewing him have been completely warped because he's taller than what you expected to be tall.
Yeah, and so it's just a shame that he couldn't have used that to do something great and become like a Boilermaker and play for Purdue or something like that. He's a big IU fan, so I got to throw a Purdue joke in there. You're a Chicago guy. You at least get that reference.
Oh, I get the Purdue IU references for sure. Too many friends gone to both colleges.
Yeah, that's.
Are you a Purdue guy?
Yeah.
That's my hometown. Because one of our first arguments on Twitter, I don't know if you remember this, was Roethlisberger versus Breeze back in the day. Oh.
I don't know that was our first, but I will argue that all day, every day.
I'm not going to lie. I've kind of changed my perspective on that over time, but I do think Roethlisberger is closer to that conversation than it's ever being talked about. Like, I think Roethlisberger is closer to Breeze than Breeze is to Manning and Brady.
I don't know that
you wouldn't agree with that. Most people wouldn't agree with that.
Roethlisberger is kind of not talked about as much as he should, and I think that has to do with his past. That as soon as you bring up, he's one of the all-time greats, people are instantly going to start, he shouldn't have been. He shouldn't have been in the league anymore. All that stuff comes up. So he's just kind of like, we're just not going to mention him. Plus, he's like very much still out there, and he doesn't like people talking about him. And he'll come on, like I live in Pittsburgh, so like I see him on the shows all the time. He's very much like he badmouths the current guys all the time. Like
I know.
He's very much
I've seen
like one of those old guys that like, my hero is everything.
He's a curmudgeon. He's like, he's like the Dante Whitner of Pittsburgh media.
You're going there with it. That's pretty spicy take there.
I'll leave it open to interpretation on how people feel about Dante Whitner on NBC Barry, okay? I'll leave that one open to interpretation. But the one thing I'll say about Roethlisberger that I think never got credit was he played in a lot of bad weather in not so creative offenses outside of Bruce Arians. A lot of different style receivers that he made really good. Like, what was Mike Wallace? But he made Mike Wallace very good. Tony Brown, obviously excellent player, great player with him, without him. Emmanuel Sanders, same thing. But there were a lot of wide receivers that I think his style, the chances he took, the way he threw the ball down the field, how aggressive he was, the way he was able to stand in the pocket. It's a similar thing to Stafford today. I think a lot of receivers benefit from playing with Stafford, from Marvin Jones to Golden Tate to Kenny Galladay to Calvin Johnson. It got them all paid. It got them all numbers. It got Cooper Kupp. Look at his numbers pre-Stafford, post-Stafford. Why do you think Puka Nacua is breaking records? Kenny Galladay got 4 years, $70 million.
Obviously, it's Puka Nacua's hair. That's what it is.
Yeah. But that's my one point with Ben that I guess I always stood by.
There's two ways to look at Big
Ben.
Yeah, there's two ways. The one you just mentioned, which is the positive, that like, hey, the fact that he could sit in there, he could play behind a terrible offensive line and make it work because he was massive and he wouldn't go down easy, and he had such a strong arm that he could still hit those deep routes, and he made so many crazy throws because he was so willing to do it. And there's the other perspective of, if he didn't play with such a great defense being in Pittsburgh, all of those chances that he took and interceptions he threw would have been talked about a lot more because it would have bit them more often than they did.
Yeah, and his career is weird, right? When you bring it up from that perspective, because he was legitimately bad when he had his winning success in the first few years of his career. Now, the second Super Bowl, post all of that, he turned it around and he had a great performance. The first Super Bowl was one of the worst performances of all time, and he didn't score on the 4th and goal. His head crossed the goal line, not the ball. But I don't think anyone cares about the Seahawks losing that game, but I'll stand by it, even though they won, 21-10, 21-3. Doesn't matter anyway. He didn't score on that play. He was terrible, but he was so excellent from 14 and 13, 14 and 15 and 16. And to me, that was when it was like, wow, this is Big Ben, like truly carrying. And then they couldn't support him. They didn't have the defense. They didn't have what to support him at that point. And I think that's where his career is weird, because I think oftentimes people look at quarterback careers and they try to take when they win is when they were the best. But with Big Ben, there's this weird case of he was really not that good when he was winning.
Yeah.
But when he was his best, he probably didn't have the same playoff success that he had when he was winning, even though he was playing excellent. Simply, because.
Well, the Brady and Patriots kind of took it to another level. Is what happened.
Dude, they owned.
How many Super Bowls would Big Ben have if it wasn't for those? I mean, Big Ben played in the AFC during the Manning and Brady era. So that that is an argument that could be had that, well, if he played in any other era, he probably has 3 or 4 championships and he's in the top 5 debate, but I don't go there. I'm probably on the much closer to the bottom than even the middle for Big Ben. I'm not a huge fan of him.
No. And I think that there's personal reasons that are very easy to dislike Big Ben there. So that's very clear.
I mean, full disclosure, I hated him from the start because I went to Ball State and I went to Ball State.
There we go.
As he was at, I was going to Ball
Miami
State
of
as
Ohio.
he was leaving Miami, Ohio. And for people that don't know, they're
huge
each other's main rival in the MAC.
This is a big Max and Nate Davis fan, I think. Then
yes.
But no,
I have Nate Davis's Ball State Cardinals jersey in my closet. I never wear it because it was a college jersey, so the name can't go on the back. And you know what it looks like?
How does it look?
Well, it's a Cardinals jersey with the number 13.
Oh, so you look like you have Kurt Warner's jersey.
Yeah, exactly.
Like every time, fake one.
Every time people go like, why do you have a Kurt Warner jersey? It's like, it's not Kurt Warner, dang it.
It's Nate Davis, the guy who had that one crazy throw in preseason that we all still remember. The one thing I will say, though, specific to Ben, and I think this still applies to AFC quarterbacks today, you bring up the Manning thing with all of that. And I've heard other people make this point, but I want to reiterate it because it's one that I've consistently held to from the time I've been doing YouTube. It's the cold weather quarterback in the AFC. Look at the guys that have succeeded. To me, part of Manning's lack of success, and this was part of the Breeze conversation, it comes full circle, is that when you got to go into Baltimore to play your biggest playoff games in January, you got to go into Pittsburgh in Heinz Field and play your biggest games in January. You got to go into Foxborough. With Brady, I think his physical skill set isn't talked about because it's easier to talk about Brady as a David versus Goliath, because that's a better story than acknowledging the fact that Brady was drafted to play catcher in the MLB when he came out of high school. I don't know that many lower tier athletes are drafted to play catcher in the MLB out of high school.
Yeah.
He was highly recruited to all top colleges. There's a reason he went to Michigan. Like, you don't just recruit every quarterback to Michigan. And he was also
he went to Michigan during Michigan's heyday. Like, he was at Michigan when they won the national championship, split it with Nebraska in '98. Yeah,
exactly. And so when you put his career into perspective like that, you think like, God damn, he was gifted with NFL size in spades. That was a huge guy, really tall guy in the pocket. And he had a cannon for an arm that was still one of the best arms when we saw him at 43, 44, 45. Like, that was Tom Brady. You look at Flacco. Like, Flacco was not a great regular season quarterback, but when he had to throw the ball in Denver and in Baltimore and all of that, all of a sudden Flacco increased his capacity because he had one of those special arms, the Mahomes, the Allens. Like, to me, that's just an AFC quarterback trend. And I think Big Ben fit like into that. And I think that fit against Manning, for example, because when you have to play outdoors and in cold weather against all of these quarterbacks who have no issues throwing the ball in the weather, it's a bad situation to me.
I'll bring it full circle and then wrap it here because we've been going for an hour and a half. I'm just enjoying talking to an actual smart football person.
Me too.
But actually, just today, I saw an interview with Tom Brady. I think he might have been on Cowherd. He was on one of the big shows. He talked about the cold weather, and he said they didn't hide from it. They, meaning the Patriots, during his Patriots day, they would practice in the terrible weather, no matter what, every day, all week, so that they were ready to play in it. So if they had a snowstorm in Foxborough in the middle of the week, they were outside practicing. They weren't hiding at an indoor facility. And I think a lot of teams, especially even more so today, as teams have more money and are willing to spend money on indoor facilities, if there's a terrible weather day, they just go indoors.
Yeah. I think we cheer for one of them, by the way. Listen to them talk about the wet footballs. Shanahan doesn't have the mindset that they should practice it. He has the mindset that it gets into his players' heads and they shouldn't think about it at all. So they should practice with the dry football, get comfortable, and pretend like the football is dry when it is wet. It doesn't matter if the quarterback can't throw it 2 feet in front of him against the Cleveland Browns. We don't practice with the wet football. That's not who we are, right? Okay, I'm joking. Maybe we should stop the show. That's bad.
No, I do agree with you that one, Purdy clearly has some struggles with. I mean, the fact he wore gloves and he took the gloves off, he hasn't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
2, like, how do you figure out? You get exposed to it more. You get more comfortable with it. So I think, Shanahan does a disservice by not forcing them to play. And part of that is probably Shanahan being a wide receiver and saying, screw that rain, that makes me drop the ball. And it's kind of like ingrained in him from being a wide receiver.
I have one last opinion for you on that because I also do have an opinion on it. I think that's his OCD. He's so obsessed with practice having to go a certain way and certain plays having to be repped a certain way and practice a certain way for his sanity that weather can prevent, like a guy can fall down in weather when he's running in motion. For him, that's like, ruin the play, ruin what we were doing, right? That ruins the practice, in my opinion. So I think that it's about controlling the variables, about getting the practice to be exactly right.
All right. I got to throw 2 super chats up that I'm sorry I didn't see until now because I kept thinking I was going to end the show. So I was clicked over to do the outro thing. First super chat, Jimmy Kwan says, Levin and Stats looks like the cops who finds the injured telephone repairman in the original John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. I'm going to have to go look that up now. I think I've seen that movie, but not for
I feel like I thought I'd seen that originally, but John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to go look that up. The other one, Harrison Hightower says, Levin, this is for you, but you have to say what he wrote there. If not, I know Rob will take it. His wallet is being drained right now. That's true. He's in Disney World.
In the summer. Gosh.
I have ransom now. I have blackmail material on Rob because he sent me a picture with a certain character that he found while he was in Hollywood, whatever they call it, Hollywood Studios. Yeah. There's a certain character there that he took a picture mimicking that character that he looks very much like. As he,
I want to know if Rob went on the rock and roller coaster or not, the hotel elevator roller coaster in Hollywood studio. There's a ride. Now, if I explain it to you, it sounds horrible, but I guess it's kind of fun. It's literally just an elevator that goes up and down, and there's a bunch of cutscenes. Oh, the monsters are coming after you. Go straight down real fast, like 8 floors. Goes up. And my dad called it when we went to Disney a long time ago. He was like, if I needed to throw up, there's so many other ways I would induce that instead of subjecting myself to that. But yeah, I wonder if Rob did that ride, because Rob, to me,
I actually have not ever had that conversation with him. I do not know if he's a big ride guy or not. Like
I was just about to say,
I
made the
absolutely
assumption in my
love
head that
amusement
Rob
parks.
is not a ride guy. What about you?
Yeah, I would say he's probably not. I would
Rob
say he
breeds
probably
motion sickness.
I
over.
don't think he avoids like going on any. Like, so my wife, like, I love amusement parks. I want to go on the biggest, worst rides there are. My wife literally, like, we went to a county fair one time. I can't remember. We had just gotten married, and we went to the county fair because she said, "Okay, I'll go on some of the rides," because I didn't want to be like the adult male going on these rides by himself. Awkward.
Yeah, it's tough being that guy.
We get there, I spend money on tickets, and then she refused to go on any. Like, we're talking any of the rides. She does not like them. I don't think Rob's there. I think he'll go on some, but I think the big ones, he's like, nah, screw that. Not worth.
I think the big ones, I'll put the family, I'll get the fast pass, I'll wait in line and put you guys in line, and then wait on the other side with the funnel cake.
Yeah.
Man, I hope he doesn't take offense to that description.
No,
I don't know.
I'm gonna find out tonight. I can tell you that. Well, it's 10:30. I'll probably wait till tomorrow to take. I don't know if he's still up and watching. He shouldn't be, because if he's in Disney World, he's got to be exhausted.
Going on, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no,
he's got to
they'll
be
have the
exhausted.
shows at the night now. That's literally the best part of Disney. Those fireworks shows at night.
Yeah. Okay, I got what you're saying now. Yeah, he might be out there. I don't know. He's got a daughter. Like, he had a daughter, I think, just before I had mine. So he's got a daughter that's only 4. So I don't know that she's capable of being.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is. She's probably
10:30 on the East Coast. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not
that's
sure. His son is older. I'm
too.
sure capable, but his daughter, we have a daughter that's the same age, and
it's such a tiring day.
Yeah, with the type of day it is there, I don't see her.
Also, in the summer, I'm just saying, Levin, all I know is I wasn't the type of person that could just be like, June 19th, when every single other person goes to Disney, I can go to. It was never in the cards.
I love Disney stuff. You can kick rocks with the prices that they have there. I will never, ever. Like I said, I'm a pretty serious person, and one of the things I'm most serious on is my money. And I don't like sit and budget every last dollar. I like to kind of live in the moment a little bit, but I don't waste money on things that they're just clearly not worth. It's like $250 a day, even when you're staying in the park. It's insane.
Yeah, Levin, I'm still on the market, so I won't let people know that my first name can be Ebenezer and my last name can be Scrooge in some situations. I
am a big time Scrooge. Rob calls me that around the holidays.
I'll let everybody know I'm a benevolent guy. I love spending money on anything and everything.
I'm a big Scrooge when it comes to Christmas, because I didn't grow up celebrating, so it's like all it is a pain in my life, because everything shuts down and that's all anybody talks about for the entire month of December.
But you don't. I was not, like, obviously I grew up not necessarily celebrating Christmas in Christmas perspective, but sure, my parents like put up a tree just because, like, hey, everybody else's family puts up a tree, we'll do that for you guys too, type deal. I still find it magical.
Tree. I think my parents put up a tree. I mean, my parents grew up Christian, but they're not Christian. So they became a different religion in their adulthood, and so that's what I grew up with. When I'm the youngest of 4. When my older siblings were young, they had a tree. I know. But around the time that I was born, they stopped doing it.
Okay, got you.
So I never had the tree at home. My grandparents celebrated, but I would get like one gift from my grandparents, and they had 20-something grandchildren. So it was like a $10, $15 gift. And I would get one gift from my grandmother on my mom's side, and it'd be the same thing, like a $10, $15 present. So, like, one of the things I hated, and probably the reason why I grew to dislike Christmas so much, was that what happens when you go back to school?
Oh,
after
what did you get? What did you
no,
get? What'd
yeah,
you
we get
get?
like we would actually have school assignments, and they've now I think
Mm.
they don't do that so much anymore because they've kind of come wise of like, you shouldn't do this because some kids don't celebrate. But yeah, I would feel like crap because they would be like, "Oh, we're gonna do an assignment. Write down all the presents you got and say which one's your
No,
best." Or
no,
do
yeah,
like,
totally.
ah,
That
I
that
hate
stuff
it.
that stuff is totally changed. I feel like me going through school, like I was
Mhm.
part of seeing that change. Like
Yeah,
it was Christmas holidays when I went to school
yeah,
from like first, second, third, fourth grade. Somewhere in between it became winter holidays.
yeah.
Just a break at the winter. So I agree with that. The one thing I will say though, as someone who didn't celebrate, and I don't know if this is magical to you too, I love neighborhood lights. Driving
Yeah,
around in the
I do.
subdivisions,
I have
I
I
love
have
that.
softened a good bit having a young daughter and a wife that likes to celebrate. So my kid does get Christmas gifts. We do have a tree. Uh, in my younger days, I swore there will never be a tree in my household. Um, that ship sailed.
Look at Brisby's comment. He said, pour one out for Levin's childhood.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I don't blame my parents. They weren't Christian. Why would you celebrate? It's supposed to be a religious holiday. Like, I'm not of the opinion, and I've had people say to me, "Well, that's not really a religious holiday." Yes, it is. It's literally supposed to be the most important one, but people don't treat it as that. But I'm totally fine. Like I was fine not having Christmas. It was the going back to school part of it that I hated. And the fact that like I said, the entire month of December revolves around that holiday and that affects my life, yet I'm not celebrating, so it's annoying that it affects my life. That's why I grew to dislike it so much, but I have softened since I had a daughter. So,
It's interesting to hear your perspective on that because I've had similar but different experience, I guess, in how I reacted to it. Similar in the sense that Christmas wasn't something celebrated in my house. Sure, my parents still got me and my sister gifts, just that was the way of them showing, like, hey, we don't want you to feel too different from everyone else. But that was not the holiday that they went all in terms of
mhm.
getting us gifts, let alone the fact that, like, sure, my parents, like, getting a gift for me and my sister was not the same. Like, shoot, like there would be kids that like 16th birthday, right? Like a
Yeah.
$50,000 car is bought for them.
Mhm.
Like my 16th birthday, my parents maybe got me like a $40 49ers t-shirt.
Yeah.
There's a difference. And I'm not questioning my parents the same way as you because I appreciate and thankful for them. It was just a different perspective. I guess I never had maybe the reaction that you're having. Like hearing you talk about it, it's
There
almost
might
like
be the two differences between me. I probably have a little more anger than you do. Anger is the thing that I have to defend against. I've
maybe
talked about
I
this
would say I
with
think I'm a
Rob.
little more naive. I would say I'm a little more naive because almost your like saying it to me was like, holy crap, I did have those same experiences, but I never like internalized the fact that we're writing about these gifts and this guy is getting this and I'm only getting this. Like that concept was there in my head clearly because it was like light bulb went off when you said it, but I never put two and two together. That's why it's funny to me to hear it
Uh,
because our
to be
perspective is
fair,
so similar. But yeah.
I probably didn't put two and two together because I grew up with parents that are like very active in fighting for the things that they believe in, and that was one of the things. Like they would go in after that and be like,
Mhm.
"Don't do that." Like I I don't remember a specific instance around Christmas. I do remember they have told me actually as an adult that when I was younger, I would tell other kids Santa doesn't exist. You're lying. And they tried to give me detention and punish me for it. My parents went in and said, "You're not punishing my kid for telling the truth. We will try to
Oh, good
have
for
him
you.
not
Good for your
tell kids
parents.
that."
Yeah.
Yeah. We will try to have him not tell kids that, but he's telling the truth. You're not punishing him for it. And they would. So I'm sure when it came to that type of stuff, they probably said, "Well, those are stupid assignments and you shouldn't," you know what I mean? And that's how I put it together.
Well, we have another thing in common, Levin, because I think one of the only times I got in trouble in elementary school was for telling somebody Santa doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Well, that was definitely not my only time getting into trouble. I was in trouble more than any other child. So
Well, you're a great story for everyone else, Levin. I had a great time doing this show. Maybe we should just start doing it on Mondays, me and you. Who needs that other guy?
I would if I could. I would totally cut Rob out of the picture. Work a rotational schedule. I don't know if you know what that means. I don't know if you've ever heard of like the DuPont schedule. It became popular in the DuPont plants back in the day, and everybody kind of copied it. But my week to week is not the same. I don't work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Got you.
I have a 4-week rotation, and in those 4 weeks, I have consistency, but the individual weeks are not consistent. So like I'll work some nights, and then I'll have a bunch of days off, and then I'll work some days, and then I have days off, blah, blah, blah. In those 4 weeks, I work 2 of the weeks in terms of I work 14 of the 28 days, and I have 14 of the days off. So it's not a bad schedule, but it means my week to week cannot be consistent. That's why Rob and I do Wednesday night sometimes, and why we do Thursday sometimes, because we prefer to do it Thursday when our show is supposed to be. But if I'm working daylights Thursday, we can't. So
okay,
that's one of the reasons why I haven't like reached out and tried to do more myself, because it's hard for me with my schedule, which hopefully that's changing because I did finish school and I'm looking to change careers.
Well, then we'll let Rob stay on, and we'll have him do the shows when, things are a little bit busy. But, when we need a little bit of a good show, we'll just, I'm kidding.
I'll just, when I'm off, I'll just pop in and like delete him from the show.
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
All righty. Well, I do hope to do it again. We'll have to keep in contact, and when schedules work, and
absolutely. I'm sure people are looking for more hair advice from Levin and Vish.
Yeah, my hair might look different with Michelle tomorrow. I might get a haircut tomorrow. We'll see.
I'll do my best to try and reproduce whatever's going on with my hair getting blown after a 40-minute walk from work.
Yeah, that might be another take there, by the way, up there with your squirt. Your squirt quote.
Gosh,
think about what you just said.
Pause. You guys have, you know what? I would like to say that I'm a mature human being who doesn't think of such.
Yeah, I'm definitely not.
No, I'm not either. It's just unfortunate that I keep putting myself in these positions on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, but that's the end of the show. Vish, again, I appreciate you coming on. I did not expect to go an hour and 41 minutes, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. Like I said, it's good to talk to somebody else for a change. And I'll see you around.
See you, Levin. Have a good one. Hey, great show, Levin. Really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, it was good. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, for sure. That was so fun. First time you and I doing a show together. It was perfect chemistry.
Yeah, it's actually only the second time I've done it. Well, third time I've done a show. I did an instant reacts when Rob went to the game last year. And then I did a show with Michelle. Right? What's that?
That was just you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I went to school for this. So I don't know how much you like listen and know my background, but I went to school for broadcast journalism and was a sports journalist for a handful of years. So this is my background. So that's why I kind of helped. Yeah, that's why I kind of